Last night in Lewiston, Maine, 22 people were killed, 60 were wounded. There's an individual named as a person of interest, Robert Card. He is still at large. We do not know that this man is the person who committed this horrifying crime. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of fake videos, a lot of false statements, and it's very frustrating. I beg people to chill out on sharing these random videos, but alas, there are a lot of people on Twitter, on X, Facebook, and other platforms sharing fake videos intentionally. Last night, there were videos of an arrest being made, multiple different videos of an arrest, and everyone was saying, and people just reposted it. There are people claiming that this man is a sex offender. The person of interest, Robert Card, is not. But let's go through the facts and the details right now. It is important that you understand what's going on for those that are in the Boston area. This is not just Lewiston, Maine. People need to understand that if in Maine, there's serious concern. This individual, should he be the perpetrator, I believe there's a strong possibility, but let's be very careful. This man is a person of interest. That's all. You can easily, within a couple hours, I don't know exactly from Lewiston, Maine, but Boston is not far from the more highly populated areas of Portland, and there's already, Boston reporting is taking this seriously. The individual remains at large. Schools, grocery stores, they're being shut down. There is a serious concern that whoever did this could still be in the area. Now, the one thing I think is very important to understand is that there were two different locations relatively far apart from each other. So I think this is something we should be very much paying attention to. Now, of course, Democrats have waited no time to come out and start attacking gun rights. But what we're learning now about the person of interest is that should this person be the actual perpetrator, then gun control did nothing to stop this individual who should by every right have been stopped. Mental health issues, threats, that alone is going to bar you from purchasing a weapon. We're also seeing even the Daily Mail lie. I love this. Saying that the AR-15 is the weapon of choice in mass shootings. I have the data. It is not true. But let's break down the facts. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about the 2A implications that you're seeing pop up, as well as some of the conspiracy theories. Daily Mail reports a highly skilled gunman opened fire in a children's bowling league in a rampage that killed at least 22 people and wounded 60 in Maine, in the Maine city of Lewiston, and is still on the run as a shelter-in-place advisory has expanded into multiple towns. Residents of both Lewiston and nearby Lisbon and Bowdoin, I think I'm pronouncing that right, I hope, have been advised to not go out on Thursday morning as the gunman remains at large. Public schools have closed in Lewiston and Bowdoin. Bowdoin, is that how you pronounce it? And also Portland, the state's biggest city, which is over 30 miles from Lewiston. And understand, I mean, this means Boston's within a couple hours drive. Police have named previously sectioned Army Reserve firearms instructor Robert Card, 40 years old, as a person of interest. Card is from Bowdoin, and his abandoned car was found in Lisbon shortly after the shooting. Now, understand as well, there were two different locations. So I'm wondering, after the first incident, was it reported? You'd think that'd be big news. And if they didn't stop this guy, he then what? Made it to another location? The shooter used an AR-15 style rifle. Yeah, full stop. When they say AR-15 style rifle, what they're saying is rifle. That's it. That's all they're saying. And they're putting AR-15 style because that just means rifle. I mean, seriously, they're not telling us anything. They say a spare time recreation bowling alley around 7 p.m. Wednesday. And then nearby Shemenengi's Bar and Grill. Lewiston Councilor Robert McCarthy said on Thursday morning the death toll was up to 22, and the town was struggling to handle this kind of shooting event. It's a small town of about 38,000. It's on lockdown currently. Police say, please stay inside your homes, while more than 100 investigators, both local and federal, work to locate Robert Card, who was a person of interest in the shootings. This is Maine State Police on Facebook. Survivors have described how they escaped by fleeing down bowling lanes and hiding behind pins as the gunman used an AR-15 style rifle to open fire while children were playing, with teenagers among the injured. Megan Hutchinson described the horror when her daughter was grazed by a bullet in the bowling alley as they were running away from the gunman. We were in the back room. Another child came in whose arm was bleeding profusely. So we barricaded in there, and another parent was in the room with me. She had a phone call and she called 911. The mother told WMTW. Now, again, there's a lot to break down here. We have this from CBS News. Robert Card, person of interest, has ties to Massachusetts. There's a concern here that considering the proximity of a massive urban metropolitan area, he may have already made it. And assuming this is the guy, because we don't know for sure, we do not. But also understand whoever did this could easily disappear into an urban environment. And that's very, very disconcerting. Hopefully they'll get a handle on this. We have updates from CNN. Manhunt underway after Maine mass shootings. What we know so far, at least 16 people were killed. One local counselor said it could be as high as 22. An intensive manhunt is underway for the suspect. Police are asking residents to shelter in place. Authorities are expected to hold a news conference this morning. Robert Card is sought as the person of interest. They say the violence added to a list of 565 mass shootings reported across the United States, which is completely immaterial to what we're actually what we're being concerned about. Thanks for the politics, CNN. But to be fair, I will also be getting into politics in a few minutes after we get through the important update. Hannaford Supermarkets, a major Northeast grocery chain, is keeping all of its stores in Maine closed Thursday morning as the search for a suspect continues. Some stores did open at the regular times Thursday before learning about the closure, and they're in the process of transitioning people out of the store. Federal agencies are assisting in the search. Authorities have scheduled a news conference for 10:30 a.m. So for many of you, by the time you watch this, that will already have occurred. Lisbon police chief calls an entire department to help in the manhunt. But let's so this is where we're currently at right now. I hope all of you are staying safe, paying attention. And I wanted to make sure that we had a quick update on this because everyone wants to know. And I think it's important to understand the shooter is at large. But we do have the politics. The politics, my friends. Of course. Raw's alerts on Twitter. It says, according to law enforcement, Card recently reported mental health issues, including hearing voices and threats to shoot at the National Guard base in Saco, Maine. The subject should be considered armed and dangerous. Caution should be used if contact is made with Card or the vehicle. Now, this is very important. He's a person of interest. That's all we know. I would consider taking this information seriously, and I recommend following the advice of law enforcement. Shelter in place. You don't want to go out and bump into someone like this, but that does not mean this person that they've named is the guilty party. They say this. Card is a trained firearms instructor believed to be in the Army Reserve stationed out of Saco, Maine. According to law enforcement, Card recently reported mental health issues to include hearing voices and threats to shoot up a National Guard base. Card was also reported to have been committed to a mental health facility for 2 weeks during the summer of 2023 and subsequently released. Was last known to be operating a Maine registration white Subaru Outback with a black bumper. The subject should be considered armed and dangerous. Caution should be used if contact is made with Card or the vehicle. So there's a lot of assumptions that have to be made right now as we enter the political space here. Because already, before anything's happened, you've got liberals and Democrats coming out and calling for an end to people's Second Amendment rights. Ed Krasenstein jumps into the fray. I'm sick and tired, he says. Robert Card, the shooter in Maine. Whoa, full stop. Ed, in all seriousness, I strongly recommend you apologize for this tweet and take it down. Robert Card is only named as a person of interest and is not confirmed to have been the shooter. This may be the guy, but you have to understand, we see photos, they're grainy. We don't know for sure if it's him. We can't really tell all that much. His vehicle was found abandoned. There are other possibilities here, okay? And I want to be very, very careful, but let me stress, let's say a photo emerges. I'm not going to say this. Well, let's just go this route because people are going to get mad. But I strongly believe we must get the evidence and wait for law enforcement to confirm evidence. Even if the media and police say someone committed a crime, it does not mean they did. If this is a person of interest and they have evidence and they arrest him, good. But always be concerned. They've named this guy a person of interest, so he may not have done it. And if the police arrest him and say, we got him, boys, and the actual shooter's still out there, We are in danger. Calm down. Secondly, bro, you can get sued into oblivion if you're wrong. Posting a guy's photo and saying you know it's him. Imagine a scenario where a firearms instructor with an AR-15 is at a bowling alley when a shooting breaks out. This instructor runs to his car and grabs his weapon to try and stop the shooter. Photos that emerge and people think he is the shooter. I am not trying to defend this individual because we don't know enough, but there are many stories. There's one very tragic story about a man who was at a mall when an active shooter opened fire and a good guy with a gun returned fire, subduing this man. And when the police arrived, they thought the Good Samaritan was the bad guy and killed him. We have to be careful here. It's very irresponsible on the part of Ed Krasenstein, and I believe he should repost it. By all means, make your political point. But to come out right now and say this guy did it. Well, let's read. He says he calls Card the shooter and says he also repeatedly threatened to shoot up a National Guard base. Stop it with the Second Amendment argument. It doesn't prohibit us from taking steps to stop this. Full stop. Those steps have already been taken. If you have a mental illness to this degree, you cannot buy a gun. You must pass a federal background check everywhere. He says, why can't we just have universal background checks? We do. It's the weirdest thing that they lie about this. I just don't understand. Why can't we require background checks on all sales of guns, including all sold at gun shows? Y'all know already. I don't even need to say it. But okay, we'll say it for those that don't, because I assume there's many of you. You cannot buy a gun at a gun show without a background check. This is a lie pushed by people like Ed Krasenstein to erode your right to keep and bear arms when we already have background checks. Spoken like a person, never actually bought a gun or been to a gun show. I've been to many a gun show. Y'all have probably been to more than me, but I've probably been to a couple dozen in my day. You can't buy a gun without a background check. But we'll break this down and we'll talk about the lies that he's pushing. Why can't we regulate AR-15s and similar guns like we do machine guns and sawed-off shotguns? Those are already unconstitutional laws. No question. And it's ridiculous that we're having this argument. Why can't we fix our mental health issues in this country? Now, that I agree with. All right, well, let's break this down. Let's walk through this. The Second Amendment, when it was written, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Back then, and even to this day, private individuals had weapons of mass destruction. Thank you. Have a nice day. Privateers, corsairs, letters of marque, actually in the Constitution. The idea was that private individuals owned warships. That was normal. And the United States, recognizing this, said, we're going to issue letters of marque to privateers, private warships. Amazing, isn't it? To disrupt enemy supply lines. Basically, condone piracy. Today, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, these large military contractors are private entities with weapons of mass destruction. Who do you think makes the weapons? This argument against Second Amendment, what Ed Krasenstein is actually saying is that you, the private individual, should not have the same rights as a massive multinational war machine corporation and private individuals for when the Second Amendment was actually written. Why can't we have universal background checks? You ever been to a gun show? Okay, let's break this down. What do we have? We have this from Austin American Statesman. Can you buy whatever you want at a gun show without a background checks from 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago? Mostly false. And I love this game they play because even they don't paint the full picture. Joe Biden said you go to a gun show, you can buy whatever you want, no background check. They're relying on the fact that people like Ed Krasenstein are either evil or ignorant. The question, do people like Ed and David Hogg and Harry Sisson, these prominent personalities, do they know they're lying? That's the question. Because they're lying. Let's break it down. What the law says about sales at gun shows. Advocates for stricter gun control measures, I'm talking about the gun show loophole. Though some observers say the term is a misnomer, the phrase itself doesn't explain who is and isn't required to run a background check at gun shows. Federal law requires that people in the business of dealing in firearms be licensed by the federal government. Specifically, the law says that a license is required of a person who devotes time, attention, and labor into dealing in firearms as a regular course of trade or business with the principal objective of livelihood and profit through the repetitive purchase of the sale of firearms. The law specifically rules out a required license if a person makes occasional sales exchanges or purchases of firearms for the enhancement of a personal collection or for a hobby, or who sells all or part of his personal collection of firearms. This can be sometimes a fuzzy distinction, but it sometimes means many sellers do need to have a license. Every federally licensed retailer, whether they're selling a gun at a brick and mortar store or a gun show or sales starts online, must complete a signed background check form from the ATF and get approval from the FBI National Instant Criminal Background Check System. We call that NICS, said Mark Olivia, the spokesman for the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Gun shows can include either licensed dealers or private sellers. So at a gun show, the licensed seller needs to run a background check on buyers and the non-licensed sellers don't. But that is a dramatic misrepresentation. And anybody who's been to a gun show knows, if you walk up to someone and say, "Can you sell me this without a form?" They're going to say, "Have a nice day. You are no longer welcome to purchase from me," for a variety of reasons. And let's break it down. The ATF likes to go to gun shows, and they like to target anyone who would sell without a background check. Because, as they've outlined in this, technically there are circumstances where you don't need it. But it is an argument, not a legal guarantee. When they say that if you're just selling it privately, part of your collection, you're fine. And what happens is, regardless of this, the law says you need a license. You can argue in court an affirmative defense that I'm just selling my collection, to which they will respond, with a collection as large as this, he's clearly soliciting and engaged in the active sale of firearms and more than just a hobbyist. In which case, you're going to jail. How about this one? The person you are selling to has a criminal record and you didn't check. Felony. This is what they don't tell you. When you go to gun shows, you almost never see a circumstance where there's someone who's not licensed. Most gun shows will not allow this, and most sellers will not walk into that trap. Now, why is it that you can sell privately, and what is the actual limitation? In a place like West Virginia, where let's say you live in central West Virginia, where your nearest FFL is 4 or 5 hours away. Your brother, who lives a mile from you, needs a weapon because they've got a coyote problem and their chickens are getting killed. The argument from the left would be that you would have to drive, both of you, 5 hours to do the proper paperwork and transfer the weapon. Or one of you would have to get an FFL. That is the basic non-background check transfer of a weapon. Now, if you want to make that argument, I'm going to say that's an absurd scenario you're describing, that someone can't just be like, to my brother or friend or family member in the middle of nowhere. It's an unreasonable restriction. But fair point. It exists. When you go to a gun show, good luck buying a weapon without a background check. Because if a person sells a weapon to a person who is not allowed to own a weapon, they've committed a felony. What does that mean? That is the restriction, that no one will sell to a stranger without filing the proper background check paperwork, unless you find someone who wants to commit an illegal act. Do simplify. When you're buying a gun, basically anywhere. And there's also this. You are not allowed to solicit for the private exchange. So I think this is where they really lie. Go to a gun show. And my understanding is you're not allowed to sell a weapon to a stranger soliciting for the sale of a gun without a background check or an FFL. That is to say, if you go to a gun show and you wave to someone saying we're selling guns, you have now broken the law. At least that's how it's explained to me. But I'll just put it this way. I don't know what they're asking for when they ask for these things, because you can't just buy a gun at a gun show. They just keep saying that. You then, of course, have this from the Daily Mail. Latest mass shooting horror brings renewed calls to ban America's favorite gun, the AR-15. They say that I believe, let me make sure. I think I have this here. Is this where is it? The The weapon of choice for America's mass shooter is what the Daily Mail called it. And this is another lie. Statista. Weapons used in mass shootings in the U.S. from 1982 to 2023. And guess what? It's handguns. I'm sick of all these lies. Okay? If you want to make an argument, there is a circuitous path by which you could possibly buy a weapon without a background check. Yeah, okay, dude, you can buy a gun on the black market. Thank you and have a nice day. What are you talking about? But they're lying about the prevalence of AR-15s in mass shootings. They say AR-15 style rifle to scare you. They're basically just saying rifle. The left wants to ban semi-automatic weapons. And they lie to you. What did CNN call it? A fully semi-automatic weapon? Semi-automatic means one trigger pull, one bullet. What they're arguing for, I guess, is what, lever action? It's the stupidest thing in the world. Okay, they're going to no semi-automatic. Now everyone's like lever action, pump action, revolvers. Spare me. This is all part of the lie to disarm you. Let me tell you. What's the solution here? You should be armed. That's the reality. Now, I'm not so blind as to not recognize serious concerns that we have with major cities. You have a right to keep and bear arms. If you're in New York and you've got a 308 or something, someone breaks in your house and you fire, that bullet's over penetrating. And there's collateral damage. Okay, you could injure people, but that's your fault, and you should be criminally charged for that. That's my view. Should people in New York City be allowed to have AR-15, semi-automatic, 5.56? Should they be allowed to have fully automatic AK-47s? Yes. And what happens if someone uses a fully automatic AK-47 and harms people? They go to prison for that. If someone breaks into your house and you panic and grab your 308 and shoot him, and that bullet overpenetrates your apartment into someone else's apartment, you should be criminally charged. You are responsible for everything that is beyond your target. It doesn't matter if you're in a city or you're in the country. It doesn't matter. You're responsible when you choose to pull that trigger anywhere. So when you're in the middle of nowhere, you live in a farm, someone breaks in and you defend yourself, you've got very little to worry about, but you still have to worry about that. That's your responsibility. Now, you can make the argument that if there's someone outside of your rural farmhouse who gets hit, you have less of a responsibility because of what is considered reasonable. You did not reasonably expect an innocent bystander to be standing outside of your property at 3 a.m. or something to that effect, and you were defending yourself. But if you're in New York, you must understand the proximity and the risks you take when you fire higher powered weapons and rifles in high density situations. I think that you should be responsible for that. A responsible gun owner in New York is going to have hollow points and frangible rounds and bird and buckshot, maybe something, I don't know. I don't want to sit here and tell you what you should have in close proximity, high density situations, but I do not believe barring ownership solves any of these problems. And I don't think there's a real argument for it. I think what they're basically saying is, look, they're like, you can buy a gun in New Jersey. Yeah. Okay. No, you can't. Like, sure. They say you can get a concealed carry permit in places like New Jersey. They make it impossible to do. The Supreme Court recently had to rule on this. So if you can't get it, New York recently had a ruling against it. Then they come out and say, you can buy a gun at a gun show. They're lying to you. Okay. They're lying. You go to a gun show, you're not buying a gun. No one's going to sell to a stranger. I'm pretty sure that the law says you can't sell to strangers. You can't solicit strangers to sell a weapon. That's my understanding. I'll quadruple check, but correct me if I'm wrong. And so when they make this argument that a private seller with a collection can sell it, I'm pretty sure they can't solicit the public to sell. So that's I'm pretty sure that's not true. I'm pretty sure in every circumstance. And then you have to add on to the fact that no one's going to sell to you because there are so many holes in which it is illegal to sell to you. Meaning, if a person does want to sell to you and you smoked pot, feds can go after him for selling to someone who's a known drug user. And that's why you have to fill out the background check form. Because it's like, oh, well, are you committing a crime? Probably. And then turns out the guy you were selling to is an ATF agent. You get arrested anyway. But I'll leave it there, guys. I hope everyone stays safe. We'll talk more about 2A stuff and, whatever. But really, just we got this big breaking story. I hope everyone's doing okay. My heart goes out to the victims. These are always horrifying stories, but a lot of people are just saying, bring back the institutions. If this really was the guy, and they knew he was the guy, they knew that he had mental health problems, then what else do we do? Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see y'all then.